I'm Timothy Heyman. I'm president of Franklin Templeton Asset Management in Mexico, and I'm delighted to be at Cornell to talk about Mexico and what I do. I've been through many financial crises in Mexico. I in fact arrived in the middle of a financial crisis in Mexico just after its first devaluation in 22 years in 1976. We then had another crisis in 1982, another in 1987, another in 1994. And this is probably the fifth or sixth crisis I've lived through, and I think Mexico is definitely a better situation to face the crisis for various reasons. The first element is macroeconomic stability, to the extent that we have bigger reserves than we have ever had, $170 billion. We have a stronger banking system than we've ever had. We have stronger balance of payments than we've ever had. We're also one of the few countries in the world whose economy is actually growing. I've been here for 40 years, in Mexico. And so both environments have changed in the most extraordinary way. It's quite possible that Mexico has changed more than the United Kingdom. Mexico, I think the most important feature of Mexico is that it's globalized enormously in relation to the way it was when I came. The first thing that's happened that I can talk about, because it's the experience where I've had this, the area where I've had the strongest experience, is the stock market. The Mexican stock market's law was only passed in 1975. We won't talk about the British stock market a little bit, but if you think of the British stock market, which was started in 1802, effectively the Mexican stock market begins to function after that law in 1975. So, but we know, at the time when the Mexican stock market, when I went into it, which was 1979, 3 years after I arrived, foreigners could not invest in the Mexican stock market. There were no foreign brokers and no foreign bankers. That has all been changed. The second point is that there were no Mexican foreign instruments negotiated outside Mexico. Mexico is the largest emerging market's foreign currency, which is negotiated in Chicago at the moment. It's the sixth largest traded currency in the world. It's the most traded emerging markets currency in the world. Mexico is one of the countries which has issued the most debt outside its own country. Foreigners can invest in all Mexican instruments. That's a total change in Mexico. Now, London has changed in other ways, but it's a very big subject. We had to talk about emerging markets, but London was already, when I worked in London, I actually began my career in Rothschild's Bank at the beginning of the Eurobond market. London is a global financial center. It always has been. I think the major changes are the way in which derivatives have taken over financial markets. That's the first major market change, and the institutional change is that, somewhat like in the United States, the whole merchant banking industry in London has completely disappeared. It's now dominated by the big banks. Merchant investment banks almost don't exist, but those are the major changes. Normally there's this thing called home country bias, where you invest in countries which you understand better. So it's not only the stock market, it's the debt market, it's the money market, it's the currency market. We think about all the markets. So obviously I feel more comfortable in Mexico. In Mexico currently, I think the important rule of investing is that you need to make money. You need to make a return higher than inflation. There's no question that you can do that better in Mexico. In Mexico we can make 3 or 4% without risk over inflation, whereas in the United States you can't make any money over inflation, talking about fixed income. That means you're pushed into stocks which are inherently riskier. So to that extent you have a higher, there's no question you have thinking as a Mexican, you have a higher risk investing in the United States than you do investing in Mexico.